Bonehonks, this video is all about frame data. This is our intermediate guide part 3 and the final iterations of the intermediate guides. After this we go to the advanced guide, and then you're free to roam the world of Mortal Kombat 1. I have taught you what I know, and you can use it all to put it together. So we have this one and one more video. If you are at the $5 tier or above on Patreon, you can go over there right now and watch this ad-free. If you're interested in joining, we've got a Discord, you get ad-free videos, match reviews, one-on-one lessons in the description down below. That being said, let's get into it.
Accept your death.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, we need to do a little crash course on hitbox versus hurtbox. And unfortunately in other games, you can actually see where the hitbox and the hurtboxes are. NRS doesn't do that for whatever reason, I'm not really sure. But yeah, side note, if you're coming from other games like Street Fighter or Tekken or something like that, my friend Hatyr made a great video on the difference between how they do frame data, so I'll link that down below. So we need to understand what a hitbox is and what a hurtbox is. So a hitbox is, as the name would suggest, kind of the area around a move where it would hit the opponent. So this projectile has a hitbox all around it as it flies across the screen. And then a hurtbox, on the other hand, is kind of the area around our character where we could get hit, or hurt, essentially. Sometimes we do moves that kind of extend us out and would extend our hurtbox out. So you kind of got to be aware of that. If you have moves like Havoc's kind of weird kind of sweep thing, you know, that might extend his hurtbox a little bit more, and you're kind of putting yourself more out there to be punished. So that being said, we're starting off with active frames here. So active frames are, like it suggests, how active the move is. So how many frames the actual hitbox is able to hit you for. So using Sindel's projectile as a guide here, the active frames. Boom. Hey, watch this. This is interesting. So the closer that we hit this move, so if we hit it right up in their face, there's one active frame. We hit it a little bit far away, it's 10 active frames. If we hit it full screen, it's 24 active frames. Now the reason that this is increasing is because the hitbox is traveling across the screen. So it's active the whole time. It's going across the screen until it goes away. So now watch what happens when we whiff it. Wait for it. 199 active frames. So it's active for 200 frames almost. And yeah, it gives us that number because it completely missed, it went off screen, and now it's gone. That's how long it takes for that move to actually disappear. 199 active frames. Kind of interesting. So that's good to know, just to kind of get an idea of how long this move is actually active for. Same with her flip kick here. So this actually is active from behind her all the way to the front of her for 15 frames. So that's how you can kind of tell that this hits kind of all around her, is because it's active for longer. If we do a move like her standing one, there's only one active frame. It's there. She smacks you in the face or she doesn't. You know, it's one of those things. Now let's switch over to Shang Tsung. I'm gonna go show you his bed of spikes. So this is active frames in a different sense. So this is just so that it stays on screen for a while. Just kind of sits in that same spot for 28 frames. So this is good to know because you can make strategies around this. Like, this is really good because it's so active, you can catch jumping opponents with it. And if you're slick enough, you can actually get combos and stuff from it, but yeah, it's good to kind of create a strategy, because yeah, if we just do something like a fireball is 10 active frames, it's good to know. Again, it'll be increased if we're across the screen because it's traveling across the screen. It's gone. 199 active frames. Seems to be pretty consistent for projectiles. So that's active frames in a nutshell. It basically explains how long your move is active on screen for. Self-explanatory. Going into the recovery frames, this is how long it takes your character to recover if a move is missed. So that's a big one there. So there's 47 frames there where I can't block. I do it close to the ground, there's less recovery frames. 41. 44. This is how you can tell what kind of moves are a little bit safer to throw out. So if I just throw out a standing jab, there's 18 frames there. So most of the time, this isn't too bad. Like, it's not like a block where you're minus 18. It's more just you kind of can't do anything for these 26 frames. So you do have to be careful. You don't want to be out here whiffing really big moves. So an example, and I've been caught doing this a couple times, is if I whiff this, whiff means to just not connect at all, it just completely misses. You have recovery of 31 frames. So 31 frames where they can't do anything. If your opponent is playing the spacing properly, they'll kind of be walking backwards, waiting for your final move to whiff, so they can whiff punish you, which is you completely missed your move, and they go in during those recovery frames and actually hit you with a move or something. So here's an example of this. So this is a 9-frame startup. It's not going to be 9 frames that it actually hits on because it needs some time to travel to actually hit Shang Tsung, but we've recorded Shang Tsung here doing that exact string that you just saw. And we're going to practice knowing that we have a 9-frame startup and it's still going to be way faster than the 31 recovery frames. We're going to watch him just completely miss this move and then punish him with Sindel's flip kick. And we know it's a punish. We've punished the recovery frames because it shows up on the side of the screen and says punish. So this is important to note, especially with moves that aren't exactly attacks. That's important too, so let's look at one of those. So we've got this Sindel move. It's such pain that you can't pin moves, I hate that. Queen's Command. So here's where we have to get a little bit mathy, you know? So this move has 21 frames of startup, it has 2 active frames. So this is where things get kind of mathy. So we have this move, Sindel's Queen's Command, which again, it's really annoying you can't tag moves in this game. I really hope they change that. But if we do the move and we look at our frame data for it, we see that it has 21 startup frames, it's active for 2 frames, and it has 31 frames of recovery. So we kind of add that all together to get 54 frames, and that's kind of how long we're just stuck out here doing this move. So just be aware that even though it's not an attack, there's still a long period here where you can't, it's almost a second where you can't block. So gotta make sure that you're setting things up accordingly and giving yourself the safest way to do something like this. So, and this is where knowing all this frame data comes in handy, because now we can figure out a way, okay, so how do we get 54 frames of advantage to call that out? Let's look at our enhanced down forward 4 here. So this is it. Wow, look at that, hit advantage 54. How perfectly wonderful. Then we use the hit advantage of that to make this Queen's Command safe. Don't know much about Sindel, don't know if this is a setup that you do, but this is a perfect example of how frame data works, how once you understand everything, you can put it all together and it all makes sense and create strategies and stuff from it. And now we're moving on to probably the most complicated of all of the frame data, and that's cancel advantage. And part of this is because I have found over the years that NRS has a really hard time calculating this, and it's not usually accurate. I got a sneeze, so just a second here. That was lovely. Anyway, so this is kind of how we calculate gaps, where gaps in strings are, and gaps in pressure, and that kind of a thing, and also how to create combos to some extent. So I'm going to use one example I've just found here is with Sindel. And Sindel, and just super easy just to kind of explain the concept, is the, we're going to do 1-1 into the low fireball, which you'll see combos. We got 3 hits. That tells us that we made a combo. So how we calculate this and figure this out is taking into account both block advantage and hit advantage and cancel advantage. So depending on whether something's blocked or whether it's hits, and depending on what the cancel advantage is, we might be able to create a combo or a pressure situation. This one here, let's look at just the 1-1. This is, again, something super simple, just breaking it down for you. So 1-1, the hit advantage is 18, the cancel advantage is 34. So that's 54 frames of advantage for us, so that means that if we do this on hit, it'll combo. We got ourselves a little combo here, right? Because we added the hit advantage, we added the cancel advantage, and then we minused the startup of this move, and it works. We still have plenty of frames left over if we wanted to do something else. Now let's look at the opposite scenario here if this move is blocked. So now we do the 1-1, and the stupid dragon logo's in the way right now. Why does it always do that? It's thinking. So we have a cancel advantage has changed to 15, and we have a block advantage of -1. So because this is a 26 frame startup on our low fireball, what we do is we take the block advantage and we subtract that by the cancel advantage. So now we only have 14 frames of cancel advantage. So there's a 12 frame gap in there for our opponent to poke. So I'm going to set Sindel to do that exact same move on block, and we're going to attempt to poke out with Shang Tsung. There you go. So now that the cancel advantage wasn't enough to cover the startup of her move, that's created a gap for us to go into and punish. All right, does that make sense? This stuff is a little more advanced. That's why we're at the end of our intermediate guide. So it can get a little bit confusing, and again, there's lots of maths and stuff like that. But this is really important information for you to calculate little gaps in strings and punish opportunities that you may have missed otherwise. All right, so let's look at a different scenario here. So we have young Scrompion here, and if we look at his frame data for the 333, do here. The first two moves, there is a 14 frame startup, which is fine. That's not really what we're talking about. So we got block advantage -5 and cancel advantage 15. So we take 5 cancel advantage off for the block advantage. That leaves us with 10 cancel advantage. So, and the startup on the third hit is 17. So we use our cancel advantage. This makes the third hit a 7 frame move. So there's 7 frames in between there, which isn't enough for us to actually poke or anything, but it is enough for us to get an armored move off. So this is kind of where you kind of go through and you kind of do these little calculations. You kind of figure out where your armored moves are. So I've set Scorpion to do the 333, and now because we know we have 7 frames between the second and the third hit, we're going to use our armor to blast through. Boom. So not enough room to poke, but enough room to get our armor off. So that's kind of if you're struggling with a string or something of a character, you kind of go in there, and like I said, there has been some consistencies where like it says it should work and it doesn't. So don't get too frustrated in that aspect. Most of the time, if there is a gap there, even if you can't poke, you can always armor. Or you can flawless block, and that's when you check the frame data to see whether it's negative if you flawless block, if that's worth it, or it's better to armor. So yeah. Now you are armed with all the knowledge of frame data. You know all the numbers. If you're a numbers person, this makes you very happy, you know, and we are all done with our intermediate series. Give yourselves a little round of applause there. You did really good. I'm proud of you. And thanks for sticking through this, and hopefully you found this stuff entertaining at least. I know it's numbers and it's math and it's all that kind of stuff, but it really will help you take your game to the next level. So that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like because it really helps me out, and subscribe if you haven't, because we make new videos almost every single day. Hashtag Bonehawks, all that stuff, and we'll see all you Bonehawks in the next video.
Accept your death.